What's going on, everybody? American Football Network here with another video today. And today we're bringing you our Notre Dame Fighting Irish preview and prediction video. But before we get started, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Help me hit that goal of 1,000 subscribers by the end of August. I'm making this video right now, and we are currently sitting at 947 subscribers. So we are 53 away from our goal. Help us get to that. Make sure you guys check out our shop. It just recently launched, and we've got a lot of cool merchandise over there. So make sure you guys check that out. You can find links for that in the description and on the channel homepage. But let's go ahead and jump into today's video with Notre Dame. So last year they went 9-4 overall, 8-4 in the regular season. They had some good wins. They also had some bad losses. So they won at North Carolina 45-32. They beat BYU in Vegas 28-20. They had a big win over Clemson at home 35-14. They beat a 6-1 Syracuse team at the time on the road 41-24. They beat and then they beat South Carolina in the bowl game 45-38. But they did have a few bad losses. They lost to Stanford 16-14 and to Marshall 26-21. And then two expected losses. They lost at Ohio State 21-10 and at USC 38-27. So, it was a bit of an up and down year in Marcus Freeman's first full season. Obviously, the injury to Tyler Buckner kind of hurt things, as Drew Pine was the quarterback for the majority of the season. Pretty much from the Cal game all the way until the South Carolina game was all Drew Pine. I believe Buckner got injured in the Marshall game towards the end of that game. But, they do lose some pieces offensively, but defensively they returned 7. And particularly the two main guys at cornerback, Cam Hart and Benjamin Morrison, are the big ones there. And then they get their leader back at linebacker, JT Bertrand. So they have some pieces defensively. Offensively, they lose some pieces. They do return 3 offensive linemen, probably the best left tackle in all of college football, and Joe Alt. And Blake Fisher and Joe Alt together are probably the best 2 tackles on the same team. They probably have the best tackle room at Notre Dame. And then the center, Zeke Correll. But they do get the big transfer in at quarterback, Sam Hartman, probably the best transfer in this transfer portal, I guess you could say, period, for this season. Hartman definitely the best transfer that was available, and he went to Notre Dame. And then you look at the running backs. Audric Estime is going to be a huge running back for them this year. Last year, he had 156 carries for 920 yards and 11 touchdowns, so he's going to be a problem. And that dude's probably 250 of just pure muscle. So he's tough to get down on the ground too. Marcus Freeman, 9-5 in his career as a head coach. He was 9-4 last year and lost the bowl game to Oklahoma State the year before when Brian Kelly left. So this is a pretty big year for him. You want to have, obviously he's not in any kind of job security positions or anything. He's not in fear for his job. Just a big season, as he's got some talented pieces that are very experienced. He's had the best quarterback that has been at Notre Dame in, I don't know, as long as I can remember. Just pure talent wise, this is a first-round quarterback in Sam Hartman that is, a top 5 quarterback in the country. So this is a year that they definitely have to take advantage, although they do have a tougher schedule, but they do get Ohio State and USC both at home. So that is big. But let's go ahead and jump into that schedule and our predictions. So week, 0, it's actually the first game of the college football season. Notre Dame will play Navy in Dublin, Ireland. I have this game as a win. I think Navy last year only lost to Notre Dame by 3. I think that this Notre Dame team is a lot better, especially in a better spot at the quarterback position. I think they're, in a position to where they're not going to be as shaky as they were last year. They're more experienced. So I don't think Navy's going to play them that close this year. I think Navy could score, maybe 17, 20 points because it is week 1. And to face a triple option like that in week 1 is going to be difficult. But I still think Notre Dame just has enough talent that they're gonna win that game by at least 10 points, and I would predict more than 10 points. I would predict 2+ touchdowns is where I see that game. Then they get Tennessee State at home. This is the first FCS team Notre Dame has ever faced, and they're gonna start that off with a win. Of course, Tennessee State just doesn't have what it takes to compete with Notre Dame. They just don't have the talent. Maybe with this being a week 2 game, you see a little bit of crazy stuff, kind of like North Carolina and Florida A&M last year, but it's not going to be anything where you seriously question, can Tennessee State win the game? They may be down 10-7 after the first quarter or something like that, but that's about as competitive as they're going to be. Then Notre Dame gets their first kind of test of the season when they go on the road to NC State in week 3. Depending on the Brennan Armstrong that we get, especially earlier on in the season, this could be a competitive game, kind of like the BYU game for Notre Dame last year. I see this one as, if Brennan Armstrong is like he was 2 years ago, where he's leading the country in passing yards and efficiency, then NC State could be a serious problem for some teams and could really put up a fight, especially against this Notre Dame team in week 3. The problem I see for NC State is I don't really like their receivers a whole lot. I'm not a big fan of their receivers at all. For the most part, they just don't have the talent that they've had in years past. And so I'm not a very high on them. But you look at Notre Dame and they don't really have huge, great wide receivers either. They have Jaden Thomas, Tobias Merriweather, Rico Flores, Deion Colsey, and Caleb Smith is their top 5 guys, and none of those guys are really great receivers. So the difference to me in the game is Notre Dame has the better running backs, the better offensive line, and most importantly, the better quarterback. And that's kind of what it all comes down to for me, is that Notre Dame has those guys, and so I think that's what's going to give them the win, in my opinion, is that right there. But then they get Central Michigan at home. I have this game as a win. I think Central Michigan, obviously, not much discussion needed on this one. They're not going to be able to compete with Notre Dame. They're going to get physically destroyed in that game. Then Notre Dame gets Ohio State at home. I have this game as a loss, though. I think Ohio State brings in 3 top 10 receivers in the country in Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka, and Julian Fleming. I think all 3 of those guys are top 10 receivers in the country. Fleming, you could argue outside the top 10, but at the very least, he's a top 15 guy. They bring in the best receiving class. The question for Ohio State, obviously, is the quarterback position and what happens there. But it's Ohio State. It's safe to assume that they have a talented guy and that they've recruited a talented guy in to play quarterback for them. I think at this point, with this being Ohio State, with this being Ryan Day, the way they've recruited, I think that's safe to say. And to be completely honest with you, I think I could go out there and throw for 3,000 yards with these receivers that they have. So I don't think that that quarterback is. And for this game particularly, to win a national championship, yes, they're going to need an above average, a good to elite quarterback. But to beat Notre Dame, I don't think so. I think they can just have a solid quarterback with these receivers and beat Notre Dame, especially when you look at these running backs that they have in Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams. They are, elite running backs as well. And then you look at Ohio State secondary. They have a very good secondary, and so it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a battle game like it was last year when Ohio State won in week 1, 21-10 over Notre Dame. I think it's going to be another hard-fought, close game similar to that, but I do think that Ohio State will win this game. Probably 24-14, 24-17, something like that. They're not going to blow Notre Dame out, but I don't really think it's going to be that. I feel like the score is going to be closer than the actual game was. I feel like if you watch the game you're going to feel like the score should be a little bit farther apart, and Ohio State should have won by a little bit more. Is kind of how I feel that game will go. But then they go on the road to Duke. I have this game as a win, but this is one they're going to have to be careful for and look out for. Obviously, I think that Notre Dame is going to be able to just out physical Duke, but Duke is a tough team. They're going to be a tough out. They're going to fight and play hard, and they have a very good offense and a very solid defense that by this point in the season could be a very good defense, depending on just if they're developed and if they work out the kinks and stuff. But they could end up being a very good defense. And so this Duke team, I just feel like they're not going to physically be able to hang with Notre Dame. And after three quarters, that they're just going to be worn down in the fourth. And that's when Notre Dame is really going to pull away. But I do think this will be a closer competitive game for 2.5, 3 quarters. Then they go on the road to Louisville. I have this game as a win. Louisville is a team that could potentially push them. If Notre Dame is the Notre Dame they were last year, which I don't think they will be, but if they are, teams like NC State, Duke, Louisville, maybe even Pitt, they're going to be able to push them. And I don't think any of those teams are going to get the win, but it's a team that could push them. So they got to look out for Louisville. It's definitely a team under Jeff Brom that could make some noise and potentially pull off the upset over Notre Dame, but I don't think so. I think Notre Dame gets the win. Then they get USC at home, and this starts a tough 3-game stretch that they have. They get USC at home. I have this game as a loss. I think Caleb Williams is just going to be the difference in this game. I think he's going to create. Now USC does have a pretty bad defense from last year, but they do get some transfers in, and I think that they can have an average to slightly above average defense, and I think you put that with the offense, and that is enough to give them the win. I just think they're a little bit of a better football team than Notre Dame is. And again, like I said, I think Caleb Williams is the difference in the game. His ability to make plays and win games, I feel like, is going to be the difference. And his ability to create when under pressure and when the pocket collapses as well and get out of the pocket and make plays happen. Then they get Pitt at home. I have this game as a win. They get a bye week and then Pitt at home. I have this game as a win, but Pitt could be a little bit of a tougher team. The former Notre Dame quarterback that transferred to Boston College into Pitt and Phil Jurkovec will travel back to South Bend. So maybe a revenge game for him. We'll see how he plays in there. I think that factor could make it a bit of a closer game. But I think at the end of the day, Notre Dame is just a better team, and they're going to come out on top with a win. Then they go on the road to Clemson. I have this game as a loss. I think Clemson is going to be more prepared for that Notre Dame game this year. I feel like at quarterback, they're definitely going to be in a better situation. Their receivers are going to be better. And Notre Dame's not going to be able to pick on the right tackle, Blake Miller, like they did in last year's game. He's going to be a sophomore this year, full year under his belt as a true freshman. And, he already showed it later in the season, the last 4 or 5 games of the year last year, that he turned him to a beast on the offensive line. So they're not going to be able to pick on him. The running backs, Clemson probably has a top 5 running back room in the country, with headlined by Phil Maffa and Will Shipley. And, Klubnik with this new offensive coordinator, Garrett Riley, I expect Clemson's offense to be a lot better, and I expect them to be able to get the win in a tougher game against Notre Dame, but I think that they can win. They're also Notre Dame has to go to Death Valley, which is going to be a tough place to play, especially at a night game, which it will be. So, that's going to be a fun, exciting game. I can't wait to go to that game, but I have Clemson getting the win here, so loss for Notre Dame. Then they get Hartman's old team at home, Wake Forest. I have this game as a win. I just don't think Wake Forest has the talent or the bodies to really compete with Notre Dame. I think that, they end up losing this game, kind of similar to the Syracuse game last year, 41-24 is what I see that score in Notre Dame's favor. Then they go on the road to Stanford, a team that beat them 16-14 last year, but I have this game as a win. I think Stanford was kind of a fluke win against Notre Dame last year. It's not a good look at all for Notre Dame to have lost to them last year, but it's just one of those games where Stanford's not going to do it again. They won 3 games last year. They beat Colgate, Arizona State, and Notre Dame. So they're not a very dangerous team. They only return 2 starters on offense, 3 on defense. They don't have really any good players on that team that are going to be at the level that they can compete with Notre Dame. And so I think Notre Dame blows them out, wins by 20 plus points. I just see that coming. I don't think that that Stanford can hang with them this year. But that wraps up today's video and Notre Dame's schedule. I have them going 9-3 overall. Probably going to have them finish somewhere around the top 15. Probably between 10 and 15, somewhere in there. I think it'll be a solid season for Marcus Freeman in his second full season as a head coach. But that wraps up today's video. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Comment those thoughts and opinions down below. I appreciate all of you watching, and I will see you guys next time.